speaker, Jim Doyle. Jim's speaking on leadership today, has a PowerPoint presentation we have set up and ready for him to go. And we're very happy to have you here, Jim Doyle.
Great to be here.
So I'm happy that Jim is here as well, and I think he knows quite a few of our members. Anyway, Jim is an author, a speaker, facilitator of high-impact learning and development. He has an inspiring message that he delivers to help other people be their best by learning to pivot in life. Jim is a veteran HR guy and a consultant and a breadwinner who's worked for several Twin Cities companies and has known insecurity and the anxiety of losing a job. He's experienced pain as a parent watching his adult children struggle with life. And he says, I am not unique in encountering life setbacks. He is great. He is spaced out. He's written 2 books, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And he'll probably tell us about those books and share his message with us. So thanks for being here, Jim.
Thank you. It's a real honor to be here this morning, or this afternoon. And I'm very aware that sometimes you can say inappropriate things, and they're not inappropriate, but people take them the wrong way. So it's nice to hear the Rotarian 4 principles, because I really believe in that myself. I brought one prop along. I'm going to move away from the microphone. I'll speak fairly loud. We're going to talk about pivoting today. And I'm going to give you 4 definitions of pivoting. One of them has to do with basketball. Now, judging by the audience, some of you may be real athletic still today, and some of you maybe have put your gear away in your tennis shoes and haven't moved around very much. But I would like everybody to stand up for just a quick second or two. Do we have anybody in the room who actually played basketball? So, would you, what's your name, sir? You use the real players. Did you play?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Henry.
Henry. So Henry, here's a mini basketball field. Come out in the middle here.
Okay.
Just demonstrate for everybody what a pivot looks like.
Yeah, but sometimes you gotta think it, you know.
Yeah. So I'll take the ball back. Thank you. Standing up, I'd like everybody to try that for just a second in your own way. Try pivoting. Imagine you have a basketball in your hands. Okay, everybody can sit down. Now, in a couple minutes, I'm going to share with you other definitions of what pivoting is, but we're going to use the basketball pivot. Now, it just happened, I'll have a slide on this in just a couple minutes. At the start of the pandemic, I was fortunate that a friend of mine by the name of Pam Borton. Does anybody the name John, you remember Pam Borton?
Pam Borton is the former head coach of the University of Minnesota women's basketball team.
Right. So she was fired for all the wrong reasons. And actually, the AD that came in and fired Pam was later fired because he created a hostile work environment. Do we have any University of Minnesota graduates here? Alumni? Okay, so we've got some. It's not the most shining moment in the University of Minnesota's history. But one of the interesting things was, Pam and I had breakfast a couple weeks ago, and right before Christmas, and I asked her, could a player play basketball if they can't pivot? And what do you think she said? No, you can't. You can't play basketball if you can't pivot. Now I'm going to give you a couple of ideas about living life using a basketball metaphor for pivot in just a second. The biggest idea I'd like to have everybody think about is no matter what you're doing today, if we don't learn to pivot in life, the game of life is going to be pretty difficult for us. Now, I won't embarrass anybody and have you come up front and actually try to show us a real pivot move. And if you haven't been doing it for very long, it feels a little cumbersome. Sometimes working with executives, it ends up kind of looking like Frankenstein trying to kind of move around a little bit. But the more we practice every day pivoting and the spirit of pivoting, the more fluid we can be. So that's a thought that I got to really had to start thinking about today. Now, if you look at my bio, and anybody that wants to hook up with me later, I've got some cards, but you can always do it via LinkedIn. If the ideas kind of make some sense to you, you want to talk some more, we can do that. I've had a lot of tragedy in my life, and I won't tell you all of that tragedy. It was refreshing to hear the stories this morning, or just before we started. My ability to bounce back in life has been a gift, and it's because I've been able to pivot. Because I've tried to figure out, what do I do to keep moving forward? And for some of us, everybody, life isn't always about moving forward. Sometimes it's going to be about moving around, over, under, to get to where we want to go. So that's the spirit by which we're going to have our conversation today. So the talk is really about thriving in life. Let me find my remote clicker here. Here it is. But I know there's probably people in the room, if we're honest, that life really today is about surviving, coping, putting one foot in front of the other, sometimes just getting out of bed. Not long ago, and one of the things Pam suggested that I always remember is when you're giving a talk, make sure people leave feeling good and happy and uplifted. And I hope you will today. But back, oh gosh, it was probably about a year ago in August, I was crossing the street and I noticed out of my right peripheral vision a car coming. The car hit me. So I'm a pedestrian. I go flying, and my cell phone goes flying, and unbelievably, I landed on my feet. And I found myself saying, gosh, not only am I lucky to be alive, I had right knee replacement, but had that person hit me on my knee, I would have had a new right knee. So Kirby Puckett once said, today doesn't guarantee tomorrow. We never know what tomorrow's going to bring. So why not live all we can today in the moment? And that's part of this idea of pivoting. But I know for some of us, learning just to survive and cope is what is a big challenge. Putting one foot in front of the other and keeping moving. Just keep going. And so that's kind of the theme of what we're going to talk about today. So, my most recent book is a book called Hope for Life, Being Your Best Self When You Need It Most. And some of the things we're going to talk about today are in the book. And I wrote a book on coaching, and I helped Pam write her book. I'm not a journalistic person by background. I've always written case studies, and I've been in people development and training. I've enjoyed that. But I'd encourage you to take a peek at Hope for Life. I was very blessed that Rocky Dwyer, the four-time Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steeler, endorsed the book. And one of the things that he said about Jim in the book was that I help people learn to come to deal with their own story of life. So everybody sitting here today, your story is half written. It includes all of your past history. It includes who you are, your family of origin, all the beliefs, the values that you have, all the great things about you. The question is, what's the rest of the story going to be? And we all have an opportunity to write that story. We're the authors of our own life. And I felt really blessed that Rocky Dwyer endorsed the book. And I'm going to encourage everybody today, as we kind of sit here and chat and talk, to think about what's next for you. And if you're not comfortable pivoting today, get used to it. Because the alternative is life passes us by. And looking around the room, we're all kind of a similar age, similar experience. And it's easy to say, well, I can't do that. And I'm going to encourage you not to think like that. To learn instead to pivot in the moment. To be all that you want to be. To be the person that you'd like to be for whatever time you've got left. However that is. And we never know how much time we have, do we? Okay. So here's our journey. Here's the first definition of pivot. Not very exciting, not very sexy, not very romantic. Here's the next one. Maybe some of you and your businesses use a pivot table. Here's the third one. And we've got 3 pivot points in our body. But this is the most exciting one, I think. And in basketball, you can't play unless you can pivot. And that's going to be the story, the theme for our time today. You can't really play in life unless you can pivot. Now, I mentioned that I helped write Pam's book. Here's a problem statement. I'm going to let you kind of read that. I work with a lot of engineers, a lot of manufacturing companies, and a lot of people today in business are faced with this kind of a potential challenge in life. How do I do a great job in my current job? How do I help management understand who I am, all the challenges I have, and how do I prepare myself for the future? How do I look ahead? Because I'd like to continue to grow and develop. Well, I think everybody has some version of that. Your grandchildren do, your parents do, not your parents probably, but your children. Any reactions to that? Is that, would you say, just generally from your own experience, pretty accurate? Yes? So people have a lot on their plate today, don't they? A lot on their plate. And the thing is, if we don't learn to pivot, if we can't move with life, we're going to end up getting stuck. How many people in the room play pickleball? Everybody pickleball? What was it like when you first started playing? Your name is?
Pretty surprising, actually.
Say more about that.
Well, I tried to play tennis in college, but that didn't work. But this pickleball thing, just to be able to learn how to operate the paddle, etc., that's what an experience.
It was an experience. Can anybody play, do you think? Can anybody play?
Yes, if they
Okay.
put their mind to it.
If they put their mind to it. Well, what are the kinds of things, the self-talk, the little professor might say to people about learning to play pickleball that might hold them back? What might that language, that conversation be?
You're the worst pickleball
Excuse me?
player I've
Know
ever
where the
seen.
kitchen.
Know where the kitchen is. Somebody else.
No, I got that from this.
How about back? What?
We were talking about, someone tells you you're the worst, blah, blah, worst basketball player they've ever seen, or the worst pickleball.
Absolutely. I don't want to look dumb. Why would I want to try that? I might get hurt. And all that language can get in the way, of us trying many things in life, right? So, interesting kind of concept. Here's what we're going to spend time with. And this may resonate with everybody in the room. This comes out of the George Wellness Center, downtown Minneapolis, our own why. Look at the definition of health. The state of being free from physical illness and injury. I've had both knees replaced, so I've got some limitations. Some of you in the room perhaps have some physical limitation, but if you have health, you're really blessed. And we all have to learn to take care of health. Look at the next one, wellness. The state of being in good physical health. The one I want to spend some time talking about, and we're going to embellish this a little bit, is well-being. The state of practicing one's full potential for the capacity of life. They like to add mind, body, spirit, the community, the environment. When you think about that, what comes to mind? Anybody want to say anything about any of those three as you're sitting here this afternoon? As it impacts your life? Could be mental health, yeah. The number one issue our country, I think, is facing today. What else? When you look up at that slide. Would anybody admit to, don't raise your hand, but think about your own physicality. What limitations do you have in life, perhaps self-imposed, given your current level of health? The one I want to again stress is that we all have to be the primary caregiver for our own well-being. Nobody else is going to do it. And belonging to this organization, what a great way to live out that kind of concept. So that's where we're going to head. So pivot in life. Now's not the time to be looking over your shoulder, second guessing. I'm going to propose for everybody that we ought to be looking ahead for what's possible, no matter what our stage of life might be. And in fact, and I try to live by this, having faith in what I hope for, certain about what's unseen. Faith in what I hope for, certain about what's unseen. Faith is what's gotten me along in life. Now, maybe that's offensive to some people. I'll just make this statement, hope that it isn't. Faith can show up in a lot of different kinds of ways. So a pivot in life, and this is kind of an important idea, is that it's an intentional move to brace opportunity, everybody, avoid trouble, and maintain balance in life while moving ahead in the desired future direction. Remember, it's not necessarily moving forward. It may be moving sideways, it may be moving around. But instead of letting obstacles block our path forward, can we develop a mindset that helps us move forward however we want to kind of go? So, the invitation I have is to think about reinventing the way you view life. So, for example, how many branches do you see? Jim? 20. 20. Okay. Was that true, or you just see them? Somebody said a lot, right? Somebody said a lot. Well, what if I said, how many faces do you see?
6. 6.
Keep looking.
1, 2, 7, 4,
9.
6, 7,
A lot.
8, 9.
I feel terrible.
There's at least 11. A couple people have told me they've seen 12.
Say 9.
How many people don't see any faces?
Oh, man, at the top.
Jim doesn't see any faces. Okay? Maybe looking at the branches, right? Yeah. So kind of an interesting example. And, you know, depending upon what we see, well, here's what employees said. Gallup, at the height of the pandemic, went out and asked thousands of employees, what do you need from your boss, your manager, right now? 4 key things came out. And I think this is fundamental to whether you're working full-time, whether you're owning your own business, whether you're retired, semi-retired, whether you're just raising your family. Here's what employees said to Gallup. The first thing is, I want a boss, I want a manager that I can trust. I want somebody that I legitimately feel like they're concerned for me, that they care, that they take the time to get to know me. The second one was, I want a boss that demonstrates compassion. Someone that really cares about me, that understands what I'm going through. The third one is stability. I don't want to work for somebody that's bouncing off walls every day. And the last one is, the one that I really spend a lot of time working on, is hope. I want to work for a hopeful person. I want to work for somebody that the sky's falling every day and that it's always cloudy and thunderstorms. And if you think about that, here's the question I'd like to have you think about. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The role of leaders evolving today. And the big question that people in manufacturing are asking is, how will you keep me safe at work? And safety is kind of interesting. And it also says, how do I feel like I belong here? How do I feel like you care about me, that I've got a future, that there's something long-term in this organization for me? So here's what I'd like to have you do. Just at your table, I'm going to have you spend just a couple of minutes. I'm going to call on a couple of people, so be prepared to say something. If you think about being a leader today, so maybe you're the grandparent of a growing family, you're the CEO of a company, you're the controller of an organization, you're the owner of a small business. How are you most challenged as a leader today? And if you think about it, in order to meet those challenges, how might you best pivot in real time to meet those challenges? So I'll give you just a few minutes at your table to chat, and then I'm going to just call out a couple of people to respond and share what they think about. So the first question is, what am I most challenged as a leader? And then secondly, what might I do to pivot in real time to meet those challenges? So go ahead at your table, and no matter what your plot in life is, have a chance to chat a bit. Okay, let me get everybody kind of back together. I would like to hear a couple of examples. Maybe we have that would be comfortable sharing as a leader, be it as a Rotarian, trying to grow the club, out talking with people, the mentoring process, as a grandparent, as a parent, running a business. Who'd like to share an example of the biggest challenge you face as a leader? Who's got one? They can share. Yeah,
In the changing workforce or the work relationships, we're finding it difficult that a lot of new clients or new employees, hires, want to work remotely. And managing that remote workers versus people who are in person is going to require a lot of adaptation.
right. So in the moment, here's a little takeaway. You can take a little exercise of the pivot concept and say to yourself, I'm now sitting down with someone who really has a preference that they'd like to work remotely. Could I pivot and perhaps see the world differently from their perspective, setting up a different possibility of conversation than I have, as opposed to just getting stuck in my paradigm, my thinking about the way it should be. Beautiful example. Who's got another one? Yeah.
My problem has always been innate shyness, difficulty in raising difficult subjects that need to be raised.
Beautiful. That can be called having difficult conversations. And one of the things I would invite all of you to think about is reframing our mind, pivoting, and thinking, could the conversation be positive? As I enter that conversation, I'm going to sit down with John and I have to raise something that could be potentially difficult. Well, what's John's thinking coming into this meeting? How might John react to my premise statement? Is there a way I could say it to lower John's potential defensive barrier and think more positively, which might cause me to pivot, shift my approach? Beautiful, great thought. Another one. Somebody else, yes.
The tension between symptoms that people want to deal with and what's causing the problem.
Say more about
that tension where we want a quick answer, so we try to make the symptoms go away rather than dealing with the causes of the underlying problem.
Right, beautiful. How do you deal with that? What's your go-to move, if you would?
There's not one right answer, but I think you have to kind of, if you understand anything, you look back is, well, what's the underlying concern? What's the rationale that someone else is using? Because you may have a problem to solve, and their concerns, they're missing, if you will, the connection between the cause and the symptom, and whether it's diversity, inclusion, equity issues. For example, the reason that's a symptom is because the cause was probably never addressed at the time.
Right, and what a wonderful example that fits with Gallup's survey. If we could be compassionate, if we could demonstrate we really care, that we seek first to understand, as Covey liked to talk about, before trying to be understood, we reach out and ask questions. We try to get a sense of where's that person coming from? Why is that important to them? That's a pivot move for someone who typically goes in and approaches life with, hey, I got the answers. I know the way it's supposed to be. Why aren't you thinking like me? The world has changed, it's evolved, and it's never going to go back. I was at a meeting recently, and the speaker said, it's not that we have a new normal. We all are dealing with a new reality. And the reality is, if people don't feel like they're being heard, they're getting their needs met, that they're welcomed, that you're friendly and warm, and you care about them, and your organization wants to retain them, and that they're being developed, they're going to go someplace else to get their needs met. I've got 5 boys, and sometimes just watching them, we can be watching a Viking game together, and they're texting, doing Snapchat. All electronic communication. That's a whole different world than the world I grew up with my brothers and my friends. Okay, so this idea is we all have challenges in life. How do we respond to it? That's what we want to spend the rest of our time with. So here were those 4 elements that Gallup talked about. Pivot leadership. This is really choosing the right behavior. So some of you in the room, just a show of hands, you've heard about emotional intelligence, EQ, people have really talked about. I like to tell people in workshops that you get hired because of your IQ, but you keep your job, you get promoted, you grow because of your EQ. Your ability to get along with people. The number one reason people leave jobs is a lousy job, a lousy relationship with my boss, not necessarily for more money. And yes, we all want to feel used and validated and so forth, but if fundamentally when I go home at night and tell my spouse, my significant other, what a lousy boss I have, it takes a special person to tolerate that over a long period of time. And in today's mobile world, people aren't going to put up with it. It's not like the old days. The days are changing forever. Okay, so here's just a good way to think about things. This idea of knowing myself, not just knowing myself, but controlling myself too. Being willing to adjust my behavior to better meet the needs of other people, to stretch out of my own comfort zone, to flex. That's a pivot for a lot of people. Most of us are comfortable being who we are. We've gotten really good at it. If you're 50 years old, for 50 years, you've perfected you. And sometimes it's comfortable to look in the mirror and say, yeah, I kind of like that guy or gal. It can be uncomfortable when somebody gives us feedback and says, you know, when you do that, you make me feel bad, sad, uncomfortable. And if trust is low in the relationship, people aren't going to give you that feedback. They're going to tell you what you want to hear. And maybe over time you've become a legend in your own mind. You know, it's funny, but you're comfortable hearing what you want to hear, not hearing what people really think and feel. So that's the challenge we all have. So let's keep on trucking. So in Hope for Life, I created this little, what I call the life choice matrix. I think from moment to moment, everybody, we show up and we choose either to be hopeful or hopeless. Hopeful or hopeless, and it's a choice. We as human beings all have free will. We get to choose moment to moment, am I hopeful or am I hopeless? And here's what can happen. When we're hopeful, we can learn to pivot. We can go around, over, under what's ever in front of us. But look what happens if we choose to be hopeless, we can get stuck and then stay stuck. So you think about people in career transition. One of the challenges is when I'm stuck and I'm hearing no pretty regularly, how do I get unstuck? And so the metaphor that I like to use for this is if we have a mindset that we are pumping wind into our sails, as opposed to being an anchor in our tail. Have you ever seen and been around someone that's really, their mental mindset is that they're an anchor? They not only pull themselves down, but they really enjoy pulling other people down. And on a team, they can be cancerous. And so the question we all get to choose is, how do I want to show up every day? Do I choose to be hopeful? And by the way, I'm not saying just be in la la land and have false hope and not do anything about what I want. No, I'm talking about having a legitimate set of beliefs, inspiration, and hopes, and then putting my best foot forward. So here's the choice. Am I hopeful or hopeless? And my fear for people is that they can drift through a period of being stuck where they throw the proverbial towel in, everybody, and then they stay stuck. See you guys, thank you. Let's keep on going. This allows us to pivot then and creating this kind of mindset. So here's something you can take away from the workshop talk today. I created this little acronym in the book as well. It's called LIVE. The L stands for letting go with faith. And faith can be a lot of different things to a lot of different people. One great example in a non-spirituality world is Tiger Woods, when asked 2 years ago, can you compete at the Masters? He didn't think about it. He said yes. He had an inner belief of faith that he could do it. Okay? So it's letting go with faith. It's being inspired for self and my others. I've done a fair amount of work with Caring Bridge. Anybody on the, I want to ask you to volunteer, but if you've had someone who's gone through a health journey, Caring Bridge is very inspirational. And we can be inspired by people on these journeys. The third one is be vibrant with a mission for life. We were all meant to shine in life, everybody. We weren't to show up in life and play not to lose. Some of us, using the basketball metaphor, when the game's on the line, we want the ball. We want the last shot. We want the opportunity to really make a difference. Others kind of shy away from that. Oh, let somebody else do it. But in the moment, in your life and in my life, what's really needed is for you to do it. For you to step into that moment and be the best person you can be. The last one is energy. I really believe you can't manage your time, but what you can do is manage your energy. What do you put your focus into in life? And see, if you're a hopeless person living your life dragging a big anchor around, guess what? You always are tired, aren't you? You always are draining energy. Every day is a cloudy, rainy day. I'm not saying that every day can just be sunshine. It can be if we create our own. But the question is, where do I put my energy? Where do I put my energy into my hopes and dreams and aspirations? So that's the live model. Any questions, thoughts on that? Reactions? Make sense?
Wrap up.
Wrap up. So let me just leave you with a story. I was asked to give a talk for hope during the holidays. I live in Minnetonka and I'm out on a walk. I've walked by these stairs 25 different times. On this particular day, this little voice said to me, go up those stairs. And I'm giving a talk to people who have lost a child. And I'm thinking to myself, what can I say to cause them to feel better, to give them some comfort? So I go up the stairs, and this is what I found. On the bench was a painted stone that said, spread joy. Now here was the learning lesson for me, everybody. I had a big temptation to take that stone, put it in my pocket, and take it home with me. But I knew the Creator, at least I had a belief that the Creator, like our Creator, didn't intend you or me, or in this case, for me to take that stone, hide it away. No. It was to spread joy for other people. And it's interesting, it's Black History Month. Martin Luther King once said in his speech about I have a dream, out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope. Thank you very much. Here's my contact information.
Thank you so much. Excellent. It's just a reminder we all need all the time. And we so appreciate you coming. And we do have that, we'll have that PowerPoint presentation, and we're being filmed today, so it'll be out in media, so you can share it with friends and family.